All right, good morning. Little crunch for time to get through what's actually really only about 5 slides of content, and the video's not working, so I've got a little buffer, but we'll try and get started on time. And unfortunately, I can't see the screen from where I am, so you'll see me occasionally looking at the iPad here. My name is Chad Hersh. I am with AWS. I lead our go-to-market market development, for life insurance globally. And I'll be talking to you today about maximizing the value of no-code on leveraging the cloud. And I've got a few other AWS folks in the room here. Chris Casey's our general manager for industry partnerships and all the folks around him. But so if you have any questions after, I'll be around. But wanted to talk to you about the leveraging the value of the cloud because low-code, no-code is a great starting point. But if you really want to kind of amp up the value you get from it, there's some things you can do, and I'll talk through those. I like these quotes from Deloitte here. They've done a great job of sort of summarizing the general value of no-code, and make it easier to build and scale customized applications that quickly deliver value. Well, if you're at this conference, you probably already know this, right? So the idea is that if you don't have to spend all your time coding, debugging, et cetera, you're going to save some time and you're going to limit the amount of testing to less than what you would otherwise have. You can take advantage of some pre-built things and so on. But I like this more detailed quote they give. By enabling tighter collaboration between business and IT teams and shortening development cycles, these next-generation development platforms can help optimize the business value of applications, meet demand for customization while reducing overall IT costs, and automate processes so teams can focus on higher-value strategic work. Well, a lot of this sounds pretty familiar because it's stuff that we've tried to do over time with things like Agile and DevOps, right? So getting the business and IT to collaborate, for example, is something that we've struggled to do, especially on the IT side of the house, trying to get our business partners in the room with us and really collaborate on building apps. And some of the other things that I like in here are meeting the demand for customization while reducing overall IT costs. Well, if you think about what best practice is, a good application should really not even need to be customized. It should be configurable enough that you don't need to customize it. Think about the best SaaS solutions. Take, for example, a Salesforce. You can configure the daylights out of it. I mean, you can drown yourself in configuration and never really customize it. So it's a good example of where you can have no code, but you can still essentially customize without getting off of, say, for example, the upgrade path or the maintenance track. So I like this quote a lot because it encapsulates a lot of what's really, really good about no code. If you think about how how no code helps you achieve this, right? You're reducing the time required to develop and test applications, like I mentioned, but it does that by providing tools, frameworks, and accelerators. And the tools part is sort of the thing that it all started with, is tools to build applications. You go all the way back to early versions of .NET and the tools that Microsoft gave to reduce coding, and obviously there was a lot of custom coding behind that. But if you start there and kind of work your way towards where we are today, it's less and less coding over time, right? And these frameworks and accelerators were a big part of helping us get there. Because the less if you can start partway there, or even a lot of the way there, by using frameworks or accelerators, it's even less coding, less testing, et cetera, because some of that's already been done for you. And so for example, Unqork's got a lot of pre-built solutions for financial services that you don't have to start by building. You start with those and then you build from there, or you configure those, or whatever you want to do with them. Some people use them right out of the box. But those frameworks over time have gotten more and more industry specific and more use case specific. So the video I was going to show you was built off of Unqork's eApp for insurance. AWS and Cognizant and Unqork took that and built it out to be a much more rich and robust electronic application that involved video conferencing between an insurance agent and the customer, where the conversation gets transcribed on the fly, so they can actually just drag that over to the application. But that's taking advantage of that pre-built Unqork eApp, and it made it even faster to get from point A to point B. If we look at the value then of the cloud, it may not be super obvious. I mean, most people think of cloud as sort of infrastructure as a service. Oh, hey, instead of putting Unqork in my data center, I put it on the cloud. Yay. Which is a good thing, right? It's still, you're getting economies of scale. It's still easier to scale up and scale down, and that's all great. Those are all, important benefits. But I would argue that it's actually a lot more than that. So if you take something like Unqork on AWS and you look at the benefits of Unqork on its own, and then combine them with the benefits of a hyperscaler like AWS, you get some additional benefits. So take, for example, the description I just gave of what we did with the eApp, right? We took the existing Unqork eApp. We then used a systems integration partner, in this case Cognizant, and we took some AWS services. So that video conferencing that I talked about, the video chat I talked about, that was already available in AWS. All they had to do was integrate it, and that took like days. And they didn't have to build that transcription service that already existed on AWS, and so they just enabled that service, and bam, it was there. So being able to take advantage of the services that a hyperscaler already has, and it's not just functionality, right? It's security, it's all the pieces, means you can essentially flip a switch, have Unqork running immediately, and take advantage of a bunch of stuff that's not already built into Unqork. So you're getting some serious advantages there. Now, if you look at this as it's a Venn diagram here, but it's not really meant to be a Venn diagram. It was just the closest thing that made sense. You're really getting the advantages of all of these things, right? And the low-code, no-code solution has the advantages we talked about. Those are somewhat, I wouldn't say obvious, but if you're here, they're probably obvious to you. If you're at an Unqork conference, chances are you at least have a pretty good sense for why you might want to use a low-code, no-code solution to start with. But if you add to that the cloud provider solutions, in our case, AWS's solutions, so all of the 200 plus cloud services that AWS has, that you can pretty easily integrate when AWS is running when Unqork is running on AWS. Okay, so now you've got this second circle. Now on top of that, you take AWS's own partner ecosystem, of which Unqork is one of a large number. So you can take advantage of a lot of other ecosystem partners that have already put their stuff on AWS, have the integration pre-done to AWS, and really start to expand on not only the Unqork capabilities and the AWS capabilities, but also our partner capabilities. Now add to that the fact that Unqork itself has its own marketplace. And you have access to those partners, many of which, of course, overlap with our partners. But you now have multiple partner marketplaces that you can select from, and that are relatively easily integrated. And so, we talked about the fact that you don't have to do a lot of coding, and your integration becomes more limited with low code, no code. But now you're talking about having access to even more stuff that's readily available and pre-made. And think about all the things that when you're developing, you have to build from the ground up. From data to analytics to security to test harnesses to take your pick. There's a million things you have to do when you build an application. But if many of those things are available out of the box, and then many more things are available to add to it, it's kind of an incredible acceleration. And then this final piece, SI partner solutions. So, a lot of the system integration partners of Unqork have already built accelerators of their own or frameworks of their own on top of Unqork. So you don't even necessarily have to start with what's out of the box from Unqork. You could start with those. Add to that the fact that you've got these multiple marketplaces plus the services available through AWS, and all of a sudden you've got this vast array of capabilities to start from. And so when we talk about accelerating development with no code, we're not really just talking about the fact that no code is faster to develop in. You're actually able to take advantage of many other things that might not be super obvious when you think about a no code platform. Add to all of that the fact that cloud development in general really accelerates some things. And what I mean by this is, if you think about traditional development, you go through a development process that is typically measured in months, if not years sometimes, right, for a large application. And it makes it really hard to innovate because everything has a cost. If you want to pilot something, if you want to do proof of concept, you're still starting from pretty much scratch every time. You might take advantage of some pre-built frameworks that are, GitHub repositories or things like that, but you're still by and large starting from scratch. With development, you oftentimes have to get space in the data center or procure new servers. We're still, I'm yet to meet a large enterprise that can procure servers quickly, and especially when there's supply chain constraints. But if you want to start testing something, piloting it, it can take months and months and months just to get it built unless it make a decision. If you start with the cloud, the first thing that's the super obvious thing that I mentioned early on is infrastructure as a service, right? So provisioning a server, easy. You want to set up a test instance of Unqork, no problem. You can have the servers up and running in minutes, right? And depending on what you're trying to do, you could use the free trial, right? And do it at almost no cost. So this allows for a whole different level of ideation and experimentation by not just IT, but by the business, if you can get them to work together, right? And so if you can innovate quickly and cheaply, your ideation kind of goes through the roof because people start thinking, what could we test? If it didn't have a big cost and didn't have a huge time commitment and it wasn't a big deal if it didn't work, you'd probably try more things. I mean, this applies to our personal lives as well, right? So, I think that ideation and experimentation, that explosion that creates, then oftentimes leads to much more rapid product development. If you try 10 things, there's a good chance you're going to find one that works or one that you at least want to experiment further with. So this starts with the simple ability to procure a server quickly and cheaply, but it expands really rapidly to a new level of innovation within your company. Now, once you start developing products rapidly, you can start deploying stuff more rapidly. So if of those 10 ideas, one works, but you can do 100 ideas a year because again, it's fast, it's cheap, you can fail quickly and move on, then you might have 10 new products a year instead of 2 new products a year. When you do this, your customers are happier and you get a lot more data in the process of what works, what doesn't, and so on. So it's this kind of virtuous circle of creating innovation simply by being in a place that's easier to do what you need to do. Now, combine that together with everything we've talked about, and it's all of a sudden really interesting how much you can actually achieve in a very, very short period of time. And so the example I was going to show, and it'll be just a blank screen for now. We spent about 9 weeks building out this app that I talked about, and imagine building a rich multimedia secure electronic application with video chat and transcription and all these other things in 9 weeks. The last time I worked for an insurance company, and it's been a little while, we built an electronic application. It took us a year and a half. I mean, not because, well, I was going to say not because we were bad at developing things. We were actually pretty bad at developing things. But, in large part because, the first thing that happened was it took 3 months to get a server, right? And then it took another 3 months to figure out what platform we were going to develop on. And mind you, this was a while ago and there weren't that many choices and it still took a long time. But then we had to go build it. And the first few versions the agents didn't like, so they didn't use it. And that wasted months. We could have had something that we could have shown, if we had had this in our toolbox, we could have simply shown this to the agents and said, what needs to be different? And that's a completely different way of working between IT and business. When you can simply show them something day one and say, how close is this to what you need? Far? Okay, give us a couple weeks, let us work it up differently, tell us what didn't work here, and we'll go from there. The way it works most of the time today is the business hands you, specs or, a lengthy document that explains what it is they need. You come back 6 months later or a year later with an application, their needs have changed. They didn't explain it that well the first time. Take your pick of all the things that go wrong in between day one and day 365. And it's not a particularly customer, it's not a great experience for your customer, especially your end customer, but even your internal customers as well. So by having these pre-built accelerators, frameworks, and so on, you start with something where it can be a conversation between IT and the business of what things need to look like at the end, and not how we're going to get there and why we're going to do things this way and so on. And it fundamentally changes the way you work with the business. And that's yet another accelerator that comes from low code on the cloud. And so I said it before, I'll say it again, it's an accelerator. And not just in the traditional ways that you would think of no code, in that, hey, less coding, and not just the ways you think about the cloud, which is infrastructure, but the way they interact together is very, very powerful, and it acts as a force for just really dramatically changing not only the speed at which you develop things, but also I don't want to use the word quality, but I think it's accuracy is not the right word either. I think that the satisfaction level of your end user and of your internal customers goes up pretty dramatically, because there's not all the miscommunication that happens. There's not all of the finger pointing that can often happen. It's just a different way to go about this. Now, all that being said, there are some caveats, right? So you can't do everything in low code, no code, which is fine. I mean, you don't want to. There are certain things that are, very, very high frequency, transactional in nature that you need, to build for absolute efficiency in the code. Sure. Do you want to build your primary transaction engine in low code, no code? Probably not. But for the vast majority of things, it makes a tremendous amount of sense. And I think it's somewhat underappreciated in the sense that most people, when they think about low code, no code, think about the front end. And it's the most obvious use case, right? I mean, which is fine. It's a great place to use it. It's the simplest use case. It's the most obvious one. But as you think about where to leverage low code, no code, particularly leveraging the cloud, the cloud is the obvious fit for that user experience piece, of course. But when you start to think about where your organizations are likely going moving forward, more and more stuff is going to move to the cloud. I'm yet to meet a company that says, "Oh, we tried the cloud, it didn't really work out for us. We're going back." The cloud is where things are going. I like to say AWS specifically, but that's my bias. But when you think about that, having to take what you build and then migrate it later to the cloud doesn't make a lot of sense. And if you build it yourself in particular, chances are you're not building it cloud optimized if you're not starting it on the cloud. So taking advantage of the fact that a no-code solution like Unqork is already built for the cloud, you could even start on-prem and migrate it to the cloud much more easily than you migrate something you build yourself. You could build it directly on the cloud, which is, of course, again, my bias speaking, I recommend. But it takes yet another pain point out of the development and maintenance process, if you will. You also benefit over time from all the R&D dollars that pour into the platform. It gets better over time. Your application can be extended much more easily over time, taking advantage of those things. So there's so many things that even after day one continue to be of value and continue to accelerate even the, I wouldn't call it a maintenance journey, that's probably overly dramatic, but your ability to enhance the application over time more quickly than you could have if you built it yourself. So, all those things being said, why Unqork, why AWS? I think that if you look at the way all the platforms have been built and all the options that are out there, what we've been most impressed with is this tremendous ability to develop essentially full stack. Right? It's not really just geared towards that front end piece. So we particularly like that. The focus on financial services as a vertical, for me personally, given my role, is of particular interest because the more accelerators you have in your vertical, the more benefit you have, which is also great. As for why AWS, our market penetration is large. Chances are that you are already using AWS in your own organization, just statistically speaking. And so, I think that having Unqork run natively on AWS is obviously hugely beneficial. You can start from day one building on the cloud, take advantage of the things we talked about, and really never have to worry about that migration that comes later. And that is something that every organization is dealing with today is how do I move my older apps to the cloud? So that's all my 2 cents worth. I'm going to stick around to take questions afterwards, and certainly don't hesitate to grab me. I'm around at least through lunch, and then my colleagues are here as well. And hopefully this is helpful, and I look forward to seeing all of you after.